Welcome to the Dad Central Show, hosted by Ed Gow Jr. and Drew Solon. We know dads want to see their kids succeed, but they don't always know how to get there. This show gives dads the tools they need to raise confident and successful kids.
What is up, everybody? Ed Gow Jr. here of Dad Central, along with
Drew Solon of Dad Central.
You got it right. You got
This
it
time
right.
I did.
Amazing. What's going on, Drew?
Well, you know, Ed, it's getting close to the holiday season. I'm not a huge fan of winter, but I think the holidays are always a great time of year. So there's a lot happening. And so it can be stressful, it can be busy. So I'm trying to make sure that I don't let the holiday season wear me down. And instead, it's just a time to reconnect and relax and get ready for a great start to the new year. What's going on with you?
Like I tell you, gradually going tornado, lots of interesting things. And it's interesting, we're recording this basically in the U.S., the beginning of holiday season, because it's Thanksgiving Day in the U.S. So I guess retailer-wise, the holiday season has started, but I saw Christmas stuff after not Halloween. I was beginning to see Christmas stuff. So you know what? Best wishes to everyone over the holidays. Hopefully it's a nice time. Sometimes it can be a challenging time for some of our dads, but we're just here to be a vessel and add positive value to families, dad and their families. And can't forget this, the Dad Central Show. It is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes care is the best of a man, because when men care for themselves and others, there's a positive impact. So that's every day of the year, not just over the holiday season, by the way. That's all through the year. But we're doing a little something different today. Drew and I are going to chop it up about an article he wrote that we're going to chat about today. So we're going to chat about 7 daily actions to help your kids build confidence. So Drew, you're the author of this beast. What prompted you to write it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think over the last, 4 years, just this journey of exploring my own fatherhood, my fatherhood journey, and then, wanting to build the strongest relationship I could with my kids through the ups and downs of life. And life, has been hectic. Everyone's gone through the pandemic, which has been, who knows what that's meant for you as a listener. But even before that, there was a lot of change, a lot of things going on, and trying to ground myself as a father, as a partner, and as doing my career was challenging. And I think in the midst of that, I saw myself not building the relationship that I felt was most important, and I wanted to make changes. And so this article is really coming out of my experience of, okay, how do I do things on a daily basis to build a positive relationship with my kids? It just so happens, as I explored more, did more research, I saw that some of these daily actions that we're going to talk about today were not just about like the relationship with my kids, but there was a lot of research that validates their overall benefit as far as helping them grow successful and confident as they aged. And so I was like, wow, this is not just the short-term fix. I thought it was interesting. So I'm looking forward to talking a little bit more about it, but it's what I've learned essentially and how I try to show up every day for my kids.
Excellent. And for people, I'm going to show it here, and maybe during the conversation, especially at the end of the conversation, here's a link to the article if you want to refer to it. So it's right there. Check it out. It's written by the esteemed gentleman beside me. So let's get right to it. So first thing we're going to talk about, and I'll contribute also, first thing he says, smile at them. Why is that important?
Well, before I get into why it's important, I want to talk a little story about where this really comes from for me. In the midst of that difficult time in life, I don't know that I was smiling very much at all. And when I was at home and the kids were, they were young. They were probably like twin 3-year-olds and almost newborn, and then growing from like 3 to 4 to 5. It's a challenging time just as they test boundaries. And of course, having a newborn in the mix as well. And so plus all those other life things. So I don't think I was smiling a lot in general. But what happened is I was just sitting there at the table one day and probably not smiling. And I was just watching at my kids. And then there was maybe one day that I was like, you know what, I'm going to, they did something fun, and I smiled. and I smiled at them, and then I saw the change in them.
Exactly.
And then at that point, I was like, oh, why am I not doing this more? And then on the flip side, I start to notice how much because I was like feeling the weight myself, I'm like, I'm probably not smiling at them. And so I would see their faces and I would see them not responding in that way. I'm like, oh my goodness. So I started to very consciously, how do I smile at them more? Like, I want to make sure that they see me and my joy at who they are, as opposed to see me and my, you know, the weight that I'm carrying impacting them. And so that's really where this comes from, is that experience of like seeing the difference that one smile can actually make. And then the difference it made for me on the flip side. And that's what I talk about, right? So it says especially when you think about babies, and it says research shows that babies are responsive to human faces. Like when you're a baby, you learn by interaction with human faces. And that's how they begin to learn and process the world around them. So my kids their brains are all developing. And so the more that I can smile at them, show them positive regard from their father, I think the better it is for them. And that's what the research says. So, I think it's a simple thing, but we often forget it when the weight of the world or the stresses of life carry us down. And being able to consciously put those things aside and engage with our children in a positive way, such as just smiling, is good. The other thing is it benefits you. When you smile, it
Yeah,
actually changes your physiology.
absolutely. I would just want to piggyback on that. That one of my mentors for a long time, when I first met him, he said something I'll never forget. He said, we emulate what we replicate. So when kids see you smile, they're going to be more prone to smile. If kids see you down, they're going to more likely to be down. And again, it's such a benefit. Just they're watching us, guys. They're watch every move we make, every step we take. Going back to an old Police song, by the way, called I can't remember the name of the song now, but try to remember the name of the song, but I can't. But there's this line that I'll be watching you. So I think that we have to realize that smiling, it lights light to their world, it adds light to your world. And again, every step that a dad takes, child doesn't forget, no
Yeah.
matter what age they are. No matter what age. I know, Drew, you want to add on. Go ahead.
That observation piece is so relevant. Right now, I have, my daughters are 9 and my son is 7. And I'm also in the process of, blending a family. And I've got now a 12-year-old in the family. And so the amazing thing is just hearing them interact, they're picking up on things that I'm like, I didn't even know that they saw that or even heard that, but I hear it happening. So the observation piece is huge. But the other thing is there are things called mirror neurons that we have. It's something that happens naturally. And so when you smile, you're actually helping activate those mirror neurons in your child. And so they then can smile back at you. And so typically, if you smile at a person, most likely they're probably just naturally going to smile back at you. And so it's just a very positive thing overall. And again, that positive regard, which I think is really important, even in the midst of some difficulty.
Yeah, I remember the song, Every Step You Take. Let's move on to number 2. There you go.
Good job.
All right, look them in the eye.
Yeah. Well, I think this is very similar in that in the busyness of life, you can be in such a rush to get things done. Like, you're trying to get lunches packed, you're trying to get yourself ready, you're trying to, make sure that everyone knows where they're going, and you're trying to get out the front door. You can spend a whole morning routine never even looking at your kids in the eye, because it's all about go, 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 get stuff done, get out the door. And then when you come home, it can be like, I've got to do this. I'm checking these emails. I got to make sure that the bills are paid. I got to do this. And so it can be so easy to just like see people, but not see people.
Yep.
And the other thing is when you look people in the eye, it gives them an opportunity. You can actually see into them, right? They say that eyes are the window to the soul. And sometimes kids are carrying a whole lot, but they're immature. They don't know how to communicate it. And so, if nothing else, just looking them in the eyes gives you an opportunity to be able to see into what is actually happening with this child. And then you can respond, not react. You can respond in a way that's going to bring out hopefully a good outcome from that situation. And they just feel seen. Like somebody actually pays attention to me.
It's a form of respect.
Great
and
point.
that means that, and of course, when our children are around us, they want to make sure we're giving our 110%, not 100%, 110%. So it's a small thing, but it's a huge thing. Just looking them in the eye and giving them full attention, that is so critical. So I 100% agree. Let's move on to the next one. Listen to them.
Well, I'm a big proponent of just listening skills in general for every relationship and at every level. A lot of the work I do in terms of leadership or in coaching, it all revolves around a very powerful skill of listening, active listening, ensuring that a person feels heard. We talked about looking in the eyes, but so feeling seen, but now feeling heard. And then on the other side, understood. Because a big part of just our natural human nature is to feel like we belong to somebody or that we're understood by somebody. And the only way to do that is actually listen. And I mean, it can be hard, especially when kids are really young. Like, what are they saying? They're repeating these things. It doesn't make sense. You're like, okay, can you get to the point? What, I've been in that, and I still at times feel it's hard, but the more conscious you are, it's this idea of feeling seen and appreciated and heard by somebody else, especially the person that is most important. You talked about, I think you were meaning to say they replicate what they emulate.
Yeah, I always get that mixed up.
So
I always get
the
it
point
mixed up.
is, in order to emulate you, like in
That's
terms
right.
of there's a positive regard, they have to feel like you actually have positive regard for them. And that's what all of these daily things are. It's like, how do you demonstrate positive regard for a child? How do you make them feel like they're important to you? And if you're never willing to hear their perspective, never willing to actually make them feel like they're heard or their voices matter, then it's going to be hard for them to feel valued. I remember my kids were pretty young, and kids are just making noises, doing whatever, but they start to talk and start to communicate. But I would be in the other room, and it's whether they were really talking to me or not, I was very intentional saying, I hear you, Michaela, or I hear you, Jada. I hear what you're saying. I'll be there in like 2 minutes. Like, even if I couldn't be there, I didn't want them to ever feel like they were just all alone without me being able to acknowledge them that they're there. And that's the other thing, is sometimes just being acknowledged that you're there by being listened to is really important.
Thank you for the correction, but I fully agree too in regards to the listening. And there's a difference between hearing and listening.
That's a very good one. We could probably do a whole
Oh yeah, we can
another
go. We
conversation
can go.
about that.
Yes.
And so how do you
Yeah.
demonstrate to somebody else, or how, the question I might ask to dads if we're discussing it or we're having a coaching conversation is like, how do you know that somebody's actually listening to you? What do they do? And you have to begin to think about, well, what are the actions and behaviors when I really felt listened to? They were probably looking you in the eye, may have even been smiling, and then they may have been nodding their head, kind of like along with you. They might have even asked the question, okay, so are you saying this? Or it sounds like you're saying you really want that toy. Like, simple things like that can demonstrate that you're listening. It's not just being like, okay, I'm stopping, I'm listening. You have to show the behavior that says to another person, I am listening to you.
Yeah, and I love one of the words you just shared, simple. Simple. And all these things that we're chatting about today are simple but powerful. So reoccurring theme throughout our whole conversation today. So let's go next. Say their name affectionately. I like that. Affectionately. Drew.
Another personal story. When things get hectic and you just want kids to behave or to follow through on something that they're supposed to do, or it's in the heat of the moment, you're probably not saying the kid's name affectionately. It's like, can you get this stuff done? Like, there's impatience, there's a intolerance sometimes. I mean, some dads are excellent at being able to just stay calm and use that calm voice, but more often than not, we tend to revert to this like very commanding, authoritative, directing and correcting type of voice, and that often doesn't come with a softness or an affectionate way. And so I found myself doing a lot of directing, correcting, and just wanting stuff to get done. But on the flip side, how many times was I actually saying their name positively? And so I was like, what's that like? So picture me at work with my boss, and all I hear is, Drew, can you get this done? Like, Drew, come on. Like, Drew, what's this? Like, and it's always, how would I feel? just as an employee. I'm like, man, my boss doesn't really like me, or I'm just so sick of my boss talking to me like that. And so on the flip side, how would my kids feel? And so I was like, if my boss came to me, hey Drew, you're doing a great job, but here's something that I'm not sure you followed through on. What can we do to move this forward and correct it? You know, that's a very different experience. And so the same thing applies for me as a father. If I want to engage with my children and I want to see them move forward positively, I probably need to engage with them more positively, but also just to help them feel, it's a big theme, valued. And for me, that's where seeing their name in a positive way was something that I thought was really important. And I started the day like that. So I'd go up and I'd, greet them in the morning. Hey, Makila, how are you? Jordan, buddy, you're looking good today. What's going on? And just saying it in such a positive way that they hear their name, which everyone loves to hear their own name, but from that real, you know, affectionate way.
Like it, and it's too many times when I'm helping fathers and their kids, I see them not saying their name affectionately. And I always ask the dads after that incident, I go, how do you think your child feels? And they say, what do you mean? I say, what happens if the roles were reversed? How would you feel? And I also say to the dads, you don't realize that that action could have impact for years to come. Just don't think about the moment. Think about that potential negative impact for years to come. And I've been in situations where I've spoken to children of dads and they recite an incident that happened 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago that is still lingering on.
Hmm. Absolutely. I think it's very important to work as much as we can to shift the weight to much more positive and saying their name more positively, affectionately than otherwise. Otherwise, that becomes. It's been said that the way that you talk to your kids is the voice becomes their self talk down the road, and so that's the other thing. How do you want them to speak to themselves as they grow and become their own person?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's move on to the next one. Provide physical affection.
Yeah, there's I think a whole host of men and dads who are like, my dad never hugged me. He never, basically the only time that my dad touched me was to maybe give me a pat on the shoulder or to bring out the belt or something like that. Nobody go get upset about that reference. I mean, the reality is many people have had that upbringing, and so it's amazing. There's so much research. So, and I reference it in the article. There's a huge link between affection in childhood and the health and happiness of a child in their future. And so, and it's from the Gottman Institute. And so, John Gottman, if you're not familiar with him, the Gottman Institute has like the longest standing research on marriage and health, more marriage health and strong marriage relationships. And so, there's a ton of insight about this idea of how do you build strong, healthy relationships for a lifetime, essentially. And so, it talks about the volumes of research that validate the importance of physical affection for children as they grow. And then how there's a lot of practical ways in that article as well to apply it to family. So I think, for me, I had a stepdad from the time I was 10. One of the things I always remember is he would always like come and put his hand on my shoulder or put his hand on my head or even on my back, like especially when it came to sporting events. And he'd just give me a real positive word, like great job today, or you should be really proud of yourself, or something just really. And I always remember the feel of him just doing that. Now, for me, I mean, I also have done some research and done things with Dr. Laura Markham, and one of the things the research also shows is that in order to, it's around hugs. Like how many, and so I say to my kids, I've told this story before, how many hugs do you need a day? The actual answer from research, I think, is 12 if you want to grow. You need 8 if you just want to maintain. And so you don't want to go any less than 8 hugs a day. And so because the importance of physical affection to your overall development. And so that's why I included this in here, because the more that dads can appropriately express physical touch to their children, the better it is for them in terms of their overall growth and development and belief in themselves, and also understanding appropriate physical touch. Because there are many dangers and risks if a child doesn't understand what is appropriate physical touch from an authority figure, that then can impact their health and well-being down the road.
I also want to quickly add too, it also provides a sense of security,
Absolutely.
trust and love that again goes on for many years to come. You know, there's nothing like a child getting a proper physical affection from their father. Because again, dads, who told me this, and I hope I get this one right, that for your daughters, you're their first boyfriend. So it lingers on, those things. And also for the sons you're raising, you're their male figure that they've spent the most time with in the foundational years. So that appropriate physical affection will carry on, will carry on, will carry on. Next up, let's talking about the strengths.
Well, I think everyone needs to know and understand their strengths, part of the coach background. But imagine so important for children as they're growing and developing. And if you as a parent have such powerful influence, the more that you can see their strengths, name their strengths, and teach them about their strengths, they begin to see it in themselves. I shared the story that as I grew up, my mom was very intentional in doing that for me. She would identify things and even connect them to my father and say, hey, your father was really skilled at this. And I see that developing in you, Drew, when you do this. I think it's a very powerful example for many reasons. And if you're interested, we can include a link to that article where I talk about how she chose to do that for me growing up. But it's really important to understand and know. And it creates, for me, a sense of identity in your child, which I think we have many issues around identity these days. And so the more that you can secure an identity in a child as they're young and growing, the stronger they'll be able to stand firm in that identity as they grow in age.
Also, too, another great thing, it creates a foundational piece for the relationship. So when things aren't going right, you have that foundation of strength.
Absolutely.
That's what the father-child relation is built on, the strengths, the positive, because things are going to go wrong. Let's be real. But again, we can always go back on the strength of the relationship will get you through the good times and the times that are not so good. And our last one of the day, tell them that you love them.
Well, it's interesting that there are many men who I've worked with over the years who would say, well, I never heard my dad tell me that he loved me, but I'm pretty sure I knew he loved me. And so it's really a missed opportunity, because some of those same men struggle to actually believe in their, I guess, in their heart that they were actually loved, and they struggle a little bit with identity because of that. And so I think it's an opportunity that fathers have to, again, secure a child's belief in themselves and an identity that they matter to somebody else and that they're part of this family and that they have a role to play, when you're able to simply say, hey, you're my child and I love you. And nothing will ever change that. I think it's very important for children as they grow. Again, the goal here is a long-term outcome of a child that grows to be confident and successful. And in order to do that, you've got to build the right things into them from a very young age and keep that going all the way through. So just I think it's very important.
Just before we close out, Drew, adding on to that, is it also, I think it's important, but I just want to get your feedback, also to tell them when you're sorry.
Oh, 100%. We talked about that with Larry Hegner in that podcast, where he said, having that humility to acknowledge when you've made a mistake, or if you've done something that has hurt them, whether you intended to or not, to be able to take ownership of that and say, I'm so sorry for what that did or how that it affected you. 100%. I think it's critical.
Excellent. Excellent. So quick bite today, and more to come. And again, if you want to go deeper into this, here's the link to the article, 7 Daily Actions to Help Your Kids Build Confidence, written by that man there. So if you have any feedback, go to him. He's the guy who authored it. He's got the big shoulders. But joking aside, as always, I want to say thank you for all the support that you provide us. Please share this conversation. wherever you're listening or wherever you're following us, subscribe and tell other people about us and what we're doing. As always, the Dad Central Show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes that care is the best of a man, because when men care for themselves and others, there's a positive impact. Also, if you want to touch base with us, we'd love to hear from you. Email podcast@dadcentral.ca. Website with lots of free resources. I was actually speaking to someone the other day and they go, check out your website. There's a lot of stuff I got to download. I said, that's why it's there. And also, that's for the podcast. I got it mixed up today. This is the website. But if you want to listen to the podcast, it's here. If you want to get the resources, it's here. So as always, I want to say thank you so much for taking time out of your positive day, dads, and those who love them. We will see you soon. Remember to give yourselves grace and don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Take care.